Hello everyone, my name is the Phawx, and right now we're going to be playing GTA 5 on the GPU in 2. There are some interesting things happening with this game. The only reason I'm touching on this game is because there have already been a fair number of videos showing off GTA 5, and there was some stuttering going and happening on from one of the Chinese testers. Now, I wanted to take a look at that, and I didn't know if they were running off of a slow micro SD card, which was my initial understanding of the problem. Maybe it might have been streaming in assets that was causing that stuttering. But it turns out that that's not the case, because I initially had mine running off of micro SD and I noticed stuttering, so I had moved it over to my main SSD. So this is running off of the SSD, the 128 gig that's loaded with the system, that does pull 400-ish megabytes a second reads. So totally fast for streaming data. Also just random data, it's very fast. It's the best possible method to be pulling data from out of anything that we have on this system. So then whilst I still noted stuttering happening, I decided to go ahead and, well, let me break real quick, just so I can explain what's going on here. This is our GPU usage, CPU, total SoC temperature package. It goes up to about 73 degrees Celsius tops. This is our CPU usage. This is our frame rate. This is the package power. This is TDP is at 7 watt. Here's our GPU clock. 600 megahertz is pretty much the average. A lot of time you're not going to see it rise over that. We're at 1.6 gigahertz on the CPUs right now, the dual core. Again, the temperature for the package. And then this new field that I've added right here is memory used as a number and also as a percentage. So we're going to go and see what happens. Right now, you're not going to notice any stuttering whatsoever. And you wouldn't notice stuttering unless you were to basically stream in enough data that the system Windows starts swapping what is in physical RAM to the SSD, to the page file on the SSD. And that's when things get really hairy. And even reloading a save file, it'll dump RAM, but there is still stuttering going on, and it's concerning because, number one, even after I have dumped RAM, and after I've dumped RAM, you would imagine that, okay, the game shouldn't stutter anymore. And the solution to our problem is, well, just don't go driving, 80 miles an hour for a whole while, just streaming in new data assets like crazy, right? So you'll notice as I'm driving that our memory used is slowly going up. It's easier to see as a percentage right here. If you go back to the beginning of the video, you see that we're at like 50%, and we're just slowly ticking up as we start loading in new textures and stuff. And eventually it'll hit 100%, and it'll go like to 99%, 100, close to that, and then you'll start to see a slight stutter, and then the stutters will really start to compound, and it's really just swappiness happening. And there's no escape from it unless you completely exit the game and restart. So while GTA 5 is totally playable, oh, also I have disabled shadows on this, so you should have noticed that from the beginning, which is why we're getting playable frame rates. And this is resolving at 720p. There is no lower resolution than I'm running at right now. Everything else is set to low. But most importantly, this is to demonstrate the problem of running out of RAM and the swappiness that is happening. And as far as I've looked as like just an anecdotal thing, as a side thing, I've tried looking up when they sell RAM for these any types of chip, they do it in gigabits, and it looks like they own the max is for DDR3, low power DDR3 at 1866. The biggest that they sell is 6 gigabytes, so 48 gigabit chips. So the max that I think will be actually possible on the Win 2 currently is 12 gigabytes, which would help us considerably right now, because we wouldn't be showing this stuttering. As you can see, we're up to 90%, and this is where 99%. This is where we're going to start swappiness is going to start happening, because the system is noticing that it's out of RAM, and it's going to start taking what it has in RAM and putting it to the disk and trying to swap it out to make room for other stuff to come into the disk. Now the problem with that is that we're loading from that disk, and stutterness really starts to compound itself. So one of the things that might actually be better is to get a fast micro SD card. And here's the stuttering. because we're swapping like crazy now. Load GTA 5 to the micro SD card, and then you would still be swapping to main SSD, but at least we wouldn't be loading data from the SSD and also swapping out memory to and from the SSD as well, because now we're taxing the SSD twice. So a smarter move would be to get a fast micro SD card, which I don't have in this machine currently. I have a slower SanDisk 200 gigabyte one in here, but you can see that we're just stuttering like crazy. These drops in frame rate, like complete freeze frames, are because of that swappiness happening. We're plumb out of RAM. And again, this only happens if you're going to be driving like crazy. And even if you were to install the game on a fast micro SD, it's most likely still going to stutter, even if you have complete access open for swapping to happen to SSD. RAM is just way faster than the SSD, just way faster. I mean, it's a small performance optimization that you could potentially do, but I mean, really what it's going to come down to is if you want to play GTA 5 on the Win 2, we just don't have enough RAM for it. So either you could figure out a way to minimize textures for everything in the game, to just make it take up less RAM altogether. That would be, you know, the other method, is just to mod the game with smaller texture sizes. But yeah, you can notice that it's stuttering pretty bad. The music is going to start stuttering out now, and that's just a limitation of the system. We're not going to be able to just do system low RAM. And again, we could have gone in and done mods like crazy to make sure that this runs, because, you know, GTA 5 was running on the Win 1, but it had to be pared down significantly to run like that. And a lot of these videos that I'm doing are to have out-of-box experiences, what you should expect by opening up the Win 2, not having to do anything, leaving it at default TDP, not going into the BIOS, not changing anything. This is what you should expect. And these are the limitations that you have to understand for open world games. This is not for games that are load each area independently. This is what games that have to stream in new assets all the time. So yeah, it's just one of those things. Thank you so much for watching. I'm going to have some more videos today, so stay tuned.